Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're spotlighting Final Doom. So, this is the third expansion to Doom 2. It consists of two 32 level expansions. Again, not really made by John Carmack or anybody at id. Instead, just a kind of licensed product, purchased product of some note. These probably, both the master levels for Doom and the final Doom are both some of the best that were available at the time. Mods, as far as, well, custom files, WAD files, but that probably doesn't stand up too much now. So it would really be a case of, why would you purchase the master levels or the final Doom as a standalone game? I don't think you could on Steam. I don't think it would, unless you had some nostalgia. I could understand having nostalgia for Final Doom a lot more than having what seemed like only about 20 files in the master levels for Doom. These are supposed to be really hard, and I imagine they actually are. The first one is Evilution, and here we are. One thing I'll say is that right now I'm moving the mouse. I found out that if you click your mouse, it will pop in, so I wouldn't be surprised if people don't realize that, and that would make them think that this doesn't have mouse support when it really does. It is questionable, though, if I'm even going to be able to make it through the first level. Still suffering from motion sickness from playing these games. The engine, the source hasn't changed. They start you off in this level completely devoid of guns, and take note that none of those enemies that I just punched to death have guns either, and there's a real reason for that. Also, I believe I chose the easiest level, and that's still not particularly easy. So they start you off on this level doing a pretty crazy thing, which is getting the power up so that you can use that to your advantage to even make it through the first room. Sensitivity on the mouse is still, man, it really was a terrible timing for me to decide to turn up the sensitivity on my mouse right before covering these games. There's something that occurred to me. You are in a weird position where this is, I need the blue key, which means we have to find the blue key. And that door opens by standing over there, which is not something I even mentioned up until this point. But yeah, when we get to the Doom reboot, theoretically, at least the events of Doom 1 and Doom 2 occurred. That is where I would guess is minimal to be true. And the Doom reboot, sort of silently, but not completely silently, implies that there's just a ton of story that occurs in Doom 1 and Doom 2, when really there isn't that. That is totally not the case. Notice how we had to run all the way back and get attacked from an area we thought was safe, and then we've seen the trick where the game is not done, but even in this case, the trick continues, because there are enemies here that are actively set up as tower guards to shoot you and kill you. if I hadn't chosen to take it a little bit more carefully. So we're back to custom arts in this, and a real attempt at polish here, but no real story. The entirety of Doom and Doom Guy is pretty much boiled down to, I think his real name might eventually have been expressed as John, but it really just boils down to, there's a guy, he's on Mars, there are demons on Mars. Why they went with the demonic and the Mars thing, I have no idea. I guess maybe they wanted some bit of difference. There probably was a decent number of games where you are just fighting demons, and the gun element does not really lock into the demon, demonic human zombie element completely. So I guess what you would say is that being on Mars and there being the UAC as a somewhat evil corporation, or at least very possibly an evil corporation, I guess that jumps you into the sci-fi element. Here they need a yellow key. This would be our first instance of actually needing to collect a yellow key. Still totally running into problems though. Just picked up a rocket, but I have no rocket launcher, which probably means that I should have collected a rocket launcher earlier. And we're still very much fighting the same enemies and in the same environments. There's a little bit of change. Some textures, things might be different, some music things might be different. But that's kind of it. There's a blue key. So this is more of the same, and playing on easy isn't striking me as incredibly difficult, but I want to go ahead and just save ourselves some time, because I'm clearly not going to get to the end of this, and just show the main art. And I wanted to see if we can sit here long enough to see the demo, so that, well, it probably isn't worth going through the demo and watching someone else play. Well, here it is. Good. So this is playing it, one would assume, on at least normal, if not extreme difficulties. Notice that there's already more people and different varieties on enemies. That pink demon, for instance, was not in the level at all on easy. So you're getting a very different experience compared to most games that have difficulty settings where it's just designed to be, well, they'll have more health, or you'll do more damage, or you as the player will have more health. Also, the demo is running through the level about twice as fast as what it took me to go through. It's still really, though, just the same thing. You are either going to have some nostalgia for Doom, and that nostalgia maybe would push you towards playing some of these expanded level things, but probably not. Or you're going to have some nostalgia for these level expansions already, and that's going to make you want to play them particularly. Notice there's 3 enemies here. When I played the level, there was only 1. So yeah, you're definitely having a different experience, a lesser experience when you play it on easy, and it doesn't make that clear. As for Doom 3 and Doom 3 BFG Edition, it does seem very much like Doom 3 BFEG edition is a major remaster graphically. So see these two enemies that were completely different on a harder difficulty. Same credits still, but yeah, it's still very much the same engine. The README files gone still. Controller support is still completely missing. You could almost certainly configure either DOSBox or the well-known freeware software Joy 2Key to use a controller, but I imagine the controller support's not great, and I recall that in older days there was quite a lot of argument and PC Master Race snobbishness about playing Doom with a keyboard and mouse, and the controller support would be either worse or placating console players, which there's some truth to that, I suppose, because there was definitely a console ports of Doom all over the place. I think there was even Doom on Game Boy, and they often were very, very different. There's actually a pretty nice YouTube video that goes through all the differences between the different versions of Doom, and some of them were pretty bad, and none of them really stand up to any replayability nowadays. It does look like Doom 3 tries to move the story forward. Most of the enemies you see in Doom 2, I think, are in Doom 1, and the graphics look very much the same. So it's not till you get to Doom 3 that you start to see, I think, a significant amount of new enemies and a new graphic style. But it doesn't get too far away from... Well, I guess it's now just in a weird middle ground position compared to the reboot. 2016 reboot is what I'm talking about. But there's really no reason to play these games. More than what I've said before, and I've said this in every one of these spotlights, is it really reconfirms to me that unless you have major nostalgia and want to go back and play the old Doom games, maybe you would just play the first level of episode 1 of Doom 1, just to get an idea of what the very beginnings and origins of this style of gameplay and this game was, and then immediately skip to the reboot. But you could probably just skip to the reboot. Okay, so that's going to be it for Evilution. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and load up the other file, because you have to launch it from Steam as a separate choice, and it's ridiculous because Evilution is, at least in the description, listed as the first group of 32 levels to play, but it is definitely the second launch choice. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and I wanted to point out that yes, when you launch these games, you are getting this attention. This version of Doom has been modified alert making you press enter. I don't know why that is the case. I think it is also unfair but true to say that the graphics look terribly pixelated. Again, without running it through some kind of deep learning super sampling to do what would be a probably 4 to 10 year process of re-rendering each graphic to make it look better, and frankly it would be really just redrawing the graphics without adding too much new detail to change the artistic intent. There's a similar project going on for Resident Evil 4, and I often wonder if they're going to get like close to 100% finished with that project, and then they'll just get DMCA'd because of copyright claims by the developers of, I believe that's Capcom. So, yeah, this is supposed to be this is the second collection of 32 levels and its own side story. Again, you really can't say any of the story that happens in this is canonical, and it's weird that they labeled it Final Doom, but I assume what happened, and if I did any research whatsoever, probably was a constant barrage of people asking John Romero, or no, John Carmack? I've forgotten which John it is. The creators of Doom probably were constantly getting asked, are you going to make any more new Doom? When is Doom 3 coming out? It, in a weird way, I suppose went in a slightly different direction in Half-Life 3 with Valve, where they only slightly capitulated to demand for a new Half-Life by making Half-Life 2 Episode 1, and then I believe they made Half-Life 2 Episode 2, and then didn't get around to making Half-Life 2 Episode 3, or Half-Life 3. But it seems like they tried for at least a couple years to placate the demand by having fans make new levels and sell it as their own. But it did definitely feel like id was not working on much of anything for at least a decade before the eventual acquisition by Bethesda and what am I trying to say? The release of Doom reboot. I'm not sure if id Tech really has any new IP within them, and id Software is really the same id Software that it was decades previous. There's just so much time that's happened. In a weird way too, I don't, if somebody tried to make the argument to me before the Doom reboot came out that a new Doom game would in any way be popular or sale, I would say that is unlikely. Yeah, John Carmack or John Romero probably were constantly getting questions about whether and when the next Doom was coming out. id Software seems like it was very much more interested in making software technology. Even the Doom reboot is more, in their minds, I think, a example of new software concepts. The way it slowly allocates frames, rates, and textures. So it will occasionally lower the frame rate or lower the quality to maintain the frame rate, so you have a smooth experience throughout the game, having variables that can be manipulated in the background. And it was either Wolfenstein or Doom that I think it was Doom that introduced their new system Snap Map for the concept of making multiplayer levels and having this online service that nobody really wanted and thus nobody really embraced or did anything with, but they were certainly very proud of that. And id Tech, at least for a while there, definitely was a competitor for an engine. Making something in the Doom engine was a realistic option compared to now, where you could certainly make something with the source engine, but you're very much more likely to make something. Again, I had to click the mouse before the mouse movement would register. You're much more likely to use the Unreal Engine if you're making something that's a first-person shooter, or if you're trying to make something that's like more of a less resource intensive portable game, cell phone game, you might use Unity. Or if you're trying to make something that's not a first person shooter per se. Also, there's been a lot more competition, certainly, with people like Bethesda kind of wanting people to use the Bethesda engine, and the Fallout and Skyrim engine, although I don't think anybody would be wise to actually use that. And there's still a couple other engines out there that might make some sense. Speaking of weird engines, I know that there was at least one mod that tried to turn Doom into an RPG, and then there was also a mobile game that I think turned Doom into an RPG. Maybe I'm getting confused there, and that certainly doesn't make any sense, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple of Doom themed mobile games in development or have been released, because that would make sense in some level. What doesn't really make sense is this map. Let's see, and you don't have a mini map, so it's not on the screen. There's definitely some quality of life improvements in a game like this that could have certainly have been made. My mouse movement is making it difficult to go where I want to go. Still. And this is just like all over the place. And here's another demon that's a big time enemy, but not new by any means. I kind of wonder how many demons I've actually seen from Doom 1 and Doom 2. And it'll be interesting in the reboot to see a new enemy and say, and very possibly be wrong about whether or not that existed in the previous game or not. This game might be the first instance of an enemy having sound effects and reacting and having knockback when they are hit. That might be true. That might be 100% false. There's probably a long list of things that Doom could have introduced, and it's just been so long that I wouldn't be able to accurately quote it. This is ridiculous and annoying, certainly, to see the blue key there and not be able to get it. And this is the experience you will definitely have on Doom. And I think that's also worth mentioning, is that you will spend a lot of time wandering around, a lot of time looking for keys and such, and the only thing that you can use as a pretty good marker as far as whether you've been in a place before is if there's a bunch of dead bodies laying around that you killed, but even that's not particularly good. And you can see there the Plutonia experiment, so difficult that even on easy, I'm too young to die mode, I still was not able to beat this level. And from what I saw in my research, that's pretty much the case. So these are the two WAD files that you get for Final Doom, and I don't own Doom 3, or be it Doom 3 BFG edition. I think historically there might be a good reason to do a spotlight of Doom 3 and then play the BFG edition. I also think Once you get to Doom 3, you're not having this extremely low resolution texture graphics and the ray tracing technology that is introduced here, but clearly not optimized for public use until decades later. Just now in 2019 are ray tracing cards coming out. That goes to show how much processing and how much technology was needed to work on it to get it to actually be viable, or at least a little bit viable. It still may not be actually viable. I would say also Doom pushed PCs quite far. A lot of the levels that were submitted for Final Doom were rejected because they were so big and they took so much RAM. That's going to be it for the spotlight. Again, I want to just say apologies if I wasn't getting motion sick. Just looking at the demos and playing this game, I'd play a lot more. I don't think I'd actually try to beat any of these levels though. It's nice to have them. It's nice to support it, I guess. But it is now owned by Bethesda and very possibly could be shut down, and it is very much probably not the people that made Doom all those years ago. But yeah, it's nice to have them, but they really are just for 5-minute nostalgia trips, not for anybody who actually wants to play the game. And if you are going to play the game, don't use the immediate launcher in DOSBox. Go find a source port that will run this in OpenGL. It'll look at least a little bit better. That's going to be it for this recording though. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.